Heyo, I'm Christy Rocha, podcast host and content creator, and I am thrilled to welcome you to the Inner Edit. This podcast is all about us, the creators, the storytellers, the visionaries, navigating the ever-changing online world. We are in this together, facing challenges unique to our craft, like burnout, setting boundaries, dealing with negativity, and that oh-so-familiar imposter syndrome. Join me as I chat with fellow creators, therapists, and coaches to explore collaborations, making connections, diving into creating conscious content, figuring out how to maximize our content output, and discovering that mindset magic that keeps us going. Whether you're a content creator seeking resources or just curious about the behind-the-scenes world of digital creators, the Inner Edit is your resource for personal and professional growth in the digital world. We're all going through the same things, so let's talk about it. Hit that subscribe button and welcome to the Inner Edit. Hello, welcome back. I'm joined today by Jennifer Anderson, creator of Kids Eat in Color. Before establishing arguably one of the most well-known Instagram accounts in the parenting and kids and foodie space, Jennifer received a Master's of Science in Public Health and worked with youth nutrition programs for food banks, nutrition research, and the USDA SNAP program. But when she started her account, it blew up in the best way possible, and eventually she left her full-time work to dedicate herself to Kids Eat in Color, an educational resource helping families navigate picky eating and feeding children. She has also created courses on picky eating and feeding toddlers, along with many ebooks full of tips and recipes for parents. Jennifer's page now has an astounding 1.9 million followers. Her posts are shared all over the internet, helping parents approach feeding their kids differently. Let's hear Jennifer's insights into how she grew her platform, transitioned to running it full-time, and her views on the responsibilities we hold as content creators and influencers in the public eye. Here she is. Hey, Jennifer. So nice to meet you. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I like don't even know where to start. I want to know about how you got started with your Instagram account, I think, but I first just have to be like, holy crap, 1.9 million. Like, it's just such a big number. Like, it's just like, that's a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it too, and I'm like, I don't even know what that number is.
Yeah, I know. Okay. All right. So let's go back and then we'll get there.
Okay.
How did you start? Why did you start? Was it intentional, a fluke?
Sure.
Like, take me back.
Yeah. So I'm standing in my kitchen and I'm making my son these cute little bento lunches because he wasn't eating. And I was having just the time of my life trying to keep him on the growth chart. And I thought, you know what? I'm a dietitian. I have all these tools and I'm having such a hard time. I can't be the only parent. Mm. And as I was learning to make these cute little bento lunches, which I had learned about when he was a toddler, my friend was like, oh, we make bentos. I had no idea what that was. So I went online. I was like, what's a bento? And I saw this inspiring blog with these very cute bento stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that for my son. So it was part that. It was having fun. But then, I mean, this was before I was having a really hard time keeping on the growth chart. I mean, the bento really became a way for us to get him interested in eating enough that he would actually eat. And so I'm doing this. And in December of that year, my brother's partner was like, you should make an Instagram page. And I was like, she's like, put those up there. I was like, okay, that sounds fun. So, I mean, I went into this thinking, maybe there's something that I can put out here. Here's the lunch. And then in the caption, just write, here's why I'm doing this and how it could help my son eat. Maybe that would help another parent. Maybe I could find another parent who also feels like this is super hard. I won't be alone. And I can use some of the knowledge that I have to just kind of put out there. And that was how it started. I mean, started on Instagram. I put up this awful picture that I was super proud of.
Oh, of course
my
you are.
son's lunch,
Yeah.
with awful kitchen lighting, it was right.
No, no ring
And that was
lights or
it.
anything.
Yeah.
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 So, at this time, were you working full time as a dietitian?
So I was working full time. I contracted to the USDA, and I was working on their kind of like a communications team. I managed the website for the SNAP education program.
Okay.
Um, so I was, yeah, very much full time.
I ask because at some point, like what was the transition from well, so maybe I should ask this first.
Yeah.
You this now Kids Eat in Color, this is your full-time thing now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at what point did you leave that
Okay.
job to
Yeah.
transition to doing this full-time?
So it was a hobby, 100% hobby. Um, I I did it for, that was like January 2017. And in this hobby just kept taking more and more time. And now I'm making cuter lunches, and so that I can so that the algorithm can pick it up, all that stuff.
Mm,
And we get to June 2018, and I had this goal of getting 10,000 followers, and I got there. I got there in June of 2018. And I thought, okay, I'm here. I'm either going to quit this hobby
mhm,
or I'm going to change something, because I just didn't like how things were going. And
mm,
so I decided to change how I was communicating nutrition information, feeding information to families. Um, and so I started making my posts more educational.
mm.
And at that point, like the whole game changed. The game changed in terms of like how people were interacting, how much help I was giving people, in terms of followers. And in the fall of 2018, all of a sudden it went from like 10,000 followers to 20,000 followers in just a few months, and then 30,000 followers. And I thought, maybe this could be my job,
Yeah.
because right now it's a really time intensive hobby. And I have
Yes.
two little kids and a full time job, and my husband's in graduate school. So
Mm.
I'm the main breadwinner for my family.
Wow.
So I
Yeah.
can't just like
Right.
leave my job and follow my dreams. Right.
Right. Wow. Okay. Okay. So I think in reiterating stories like that, like it seems very I don't want to say easy, but just like here's what happened and da da da. But
Yeah.
like talk to me about a little bit of the mindset that perhaps shifted for you. Like, was there fear? Was there excitement? Was there imposter syndrome? Like you're entering into a space where, like I always say, this world, like there's no rule book. There's no a set way to do this. Like how how did you know, or did you not know and just took a shot? Like how did you know or feel secure that you could actually make this a thing, make it your job, make money doing it, still enjoy it? Like I don't know, I struggle with that. Like I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I struggle with like the security, the confidence, the you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
for sure. Well, up to that point, it was very much like, this is my hobby. And I had this sense, I just had a really strong sense
Mm,
that I needed to ride this wave.
okay.
Like that was the image that just kept coming to mind. It was like, ride the wave, say yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like a way for me to say yes. I said yes to all sorts of things, like paid sponsorships. Whereas before, that's just like not really part of my personality, I guess. I don't know. It's like my policy was for this little side hobby to say yes to everything that I could, right?
Right.
Um, and it just kind of flowed. Um, Also personally during this time, I had like when I weaned my second son, I got depressed. And this is a pretty hormonal changes and all sorts of things um, can really contribute to depression. I had postpartum depression and like all this stuff. And I've been kind of like searching. I worked with a therapist and I wasn't seeing any benefits. And then I worked with this nutritionist, this registered dietitian, and we did a whole bunch of like I did a bunch of blood testing with her. And she said, your B12 is low. I think you might feel better
Mm.
if we get rid of that deficiency.
Mm.
So I resolved this B12 deficiency in the fall of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I came back to life.
Mm.
It was like, oh my gosh, I had drive again. I was interested in things. I could dream. I could be like, oh my gosh, maybe I can make this a job for myself.
Yeah.
And I could see like a bunch of visions in my head. Did I know that I would work for sure? No way. I mean,
Right.
my husband is like a full-time PhD student. I am the primary parent. Significantly, I am the primary income earner for our home. I can't mess around, right?
Yeah.
And my husband is just coming into like the most intensive part of his PhD where he's now working full time because his funding had run out. So
Mm.
he's working full time. And then he's coming home, eating dinner, and going and working on his dissertation
Mm-hmm.
on like
Yeah.
until he like can't work anymore. And then he'll go to sleep and do it again the next day. Like that's our life right now. I actually, I always forget that this happened, but I have an Instagram friend and we actually tried to start a little business with a whole bunch of other dietitians where we were kind of going out and getting sponsorships. And then we would almost like an influencer network.
Yeah.
Like we were going to do that with dietitians. And then I just realized like I hated it. So that lasted like 2 months. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally sitting here working on contracts all the time. This is awful. I don't
Yeah.
enjoy absolutely any part of this.
Yeah.
So I tried that, but then really, again, like I'm taking care of the kids, waking up in the middle of the night. I'm doing the laundry. I'm doing the cooking. I'm doing all the parenting things,
Mm.
right? While my husband is trying to get this thing done so that we can all move on to the next phase. So when he finished in the spring of 2019, I was like, okay, it's my time.
Yeah.
I started working like essentially we switched roles, right? He took that laundry over,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, and so he did a lot of the home related stuff and I just started working. So there was a time period where, I had my full-time job. And it was a good full-time job, right? It paid well, it was flexible, it was family friendly. It wasn't stressful. In fact, it was boring. And that was part of the reason that I started this side gig is because I was bored.
Right. Right.
So, me leaving such a secure government funded position that I was a key component of, that I had some like management responsibility for, that was easy, that, all this stuff that had great benefits.
Mm-hmm.
That was tricky. That was tricky because again, my family is relying on me. And even though now my husband has a job, I mean, we both need to be working.
Right.
So, yeah, it was tricky. And my kids didn't really handle me all of a sudden working 2 jobs very well.
Yeah.
That was super stressful for them. It was super stressful on everyone.
Yeah.
Honestly. And coming out for like, okay, we're doing the PhD finishing thing. And now we're doing the mom starting a business thing. I mean, that was really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I'd really banked on the idea that, okay, we're going to get through this 6-month period and it's going to be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to spend the next year really making up for that. The problem was then it was 2020.
Oh.
And so that that whole thing.
Yeah.
What a nightmare. But anyway, I mean, for me, it was like until I had 3 full months of like salary in the bank as like a reserve for the business. And I had shown myself that I could match my current salary for 3 months.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was not going to quit my job. I was like, I'm not going to let my children suffer for my dream.
Yeah. Okay.
Like that just wasn't going to happen. So, so yeah, so I did that. And then And then I quit in January 2020.
Yeah, it's super interesting because it's quite a different story from what I typically hear is like, oh, I was just looking for a creative outlet and then it took off, something went viral and or like I had my kids and was home, had time on my hands, like let me just post some stuff. I mean, it feels the phrase that's coming to me, it might be like too aggressive for it, but like it's do or die. Like you're not messing around. This is a
Yeah.
job, right? Like
Right.
you don't have a lot of option here for it to not work at this
Yeah. Oh
point.
my gosh. I mean, once I
Yeah.
decided, like, because it just came to the decision point, like, I can't have a full-time hobby
Yeah.
and a full-time
Yes.
job.
Yes.
This is unsustainable for my life. So
Yes.
I'm either going to do one or the other. And yeah, I could stay in this really secure, boring job. And that would have been fine. Although, I was a contractor, so there's no guarantee. I
Right.
could get
Yeah.
fired. Somebody else could get the contract. Um, or I could like go after this thing where
Yeah.
I felt the pull, right? I'm like, I have something to offer. I can help other parents. I can make a difference. Which ultimately, I mean, my training is first in public health.
Mm,
And with public health, we're looking at populations. We're not looking at individuals per se,
okay.
right? We're saying, okay, what's happening in the big picture? What's you know, what's kind of the group, what are the group recommendations that we're making? We're looking at the big picture. And um, so when I came to this, it was kind of like a good fit. It was like, I do have a big picture.
Mm,
I can talk, I can make broader observations and recommendations, and yet I'm still getting that like personal fulfillment of interacting with people in DMs. I mean, I answered every single DM for years.
yeah.
I spent hours. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure if this is healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
spending hours
Yeah.
every day answering DMs. But I mean, that's how the community was there. That's how I felt connected. That's how I could help people. Um, you know,
Yeah.
because there's nothing like someone saying, I feel like I'm failing because I fed my kid toast too many days in a row.
Right.
And I could come in as a person like in the same boat, being like, yeah, I get it. And also you're doing great. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter that you fed them toast 7 days in a row.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was both. It was like I started this as a hobby for fun, and it just kind of kept progressing, and I kept saying yes, and I kept following whatever happened. And at the same time, once I decided that I couldn't do both and I wanted to do this, it was a do or die. It was like, again, this isn't a little side gig. It has to either be able to support my family or not support my family.
Right. Yeah.
There's not really an in between there. I mean, in
Yes.
terms of how much is going to support my family, yeah, that can be variable. But like somebody got to pay the rent.
Yeah. 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 The other thing that's coming to mind, and I wonder what what specifically was going on. So the thing that's coming to mind for me right now is this is touching on something that I think a lot of creators struggle with is the still like stigma or misunderstanding that like being a person on social media who makes a living is easy, is oh you're so lucky to have this opportunity to just make fun videos and take pretty pictures and make money doing it. Like I think this is still a thing, it's like
Oh, for
wow,
sure. People
just
don't get it.
got fluke and like wow, now you're just have all this reach and lucky you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is a lot of credibility taken away from actually the business of it and the amount of work that goes into it. And I wonder when we talk about your experience and your journey of saying, okay, now I'm going to do this, we're going to make it happen. At that point, was it strictly a social media account that was maybe had some sponsorships and things like that, or did you already have the plan in mind for like the things that you have now with the ebooks and the courses and things like that? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think, unfortunately, people see those as very different, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
there are people that strictly make money from social media. And then there
Mm-hmm.
are people that start that way, but then use social media to market for other things that they're
Yeah.
doing. And the
Yeah.
people that do that seem to have get a little bit more respect than the others. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious at that, with the point that you stepped away from your job, were those things in the plan that
Mm-hmm.
gave it more like, weight to it, or was it like, look, I'm
Yeah.
making money with sponsors and like great, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm asking?
No, 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 no. No, I mean, I did not sponsorships, no way. They were not even, I mean, I had done some sponsorships, but in terms of like, I mean, it's like no way. No way
Yeah.
I could have paid the rent with
Yeah.
sponsorships.
Okay.
Moving it like into 2019. Yeah, I did have some sponsorships and I took all that money and I put it back into like I bought a laptop and for my business and I paid for the website and I
Yeah.
just
A
took all
lot.
of that. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, there's
It's a
all sorts of
lot.
little
Yeah.
things and the the plugins and the this and things break and your email system, like all that stuff costs money. This
Yeah.
takes money. And so anytime I got like a $300 sponsorship, I think that was like my first sponsorship. It's like maybe 150 or 275, something around there.
Hmm.
And I took that money and, put it to the side. Not that I could do anything with that amount of money for the business, but
Right.
and then I got another one, and then I could buy the laptop, and then I could right and all that
Right.
stuff. Um, so at that point, I was just kind of daydreaming. I was messing around with this like RDN network and realized that wasn't going to work. I'm thinking
Right.
about blogs. I'm thinking about, all this stuff. I thought about going into business with somebody else and we were going to do some sort of parenting thing. I don't know. That didn't really work. So I was just kind of like putting feelers out, like what do I want to do? What can I do? And then I decided, like I wanted to go, like, what's my passion? My passion is child health.
Mm.
That's what it is. I'm not just here for the money or the sponsorships, which I love. I don't have any problem with people doing sponsorships. I mean, as long as they're, disclosing and all that stuff.
Right.
But that just didn't feel like me, right?
Mm.
So I just wanted to do that. And I have one company that I work with now that I feel okay about. Um, but everybody's kind of, there's so many options out there and you have to kind of figure out like what was I good at? What did I want to do? What was tolerable to me? Like going and getting contracts all the time was absolutely not tolerable. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I would not be here doing
Like
this
it's like
today
visceral.
if it
Yeah.
was based on
Yeah.
contracts. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't deal with all that like administrative stuff. So I decided, yeah, I was going to create this picky eating program because that's really what I had to offer. And then again, like that's not something that I could have like quit my job with either, especially like I only offered it certain times because I can only do so much, right? Um, and I had a lot of program development to do with that. And then as I was going into it, we're approaching end of July, we're going into August, and I was like, oh my gosh, my son's going to first grade or the kindergarten. No, first grade. What's he going to do? First grade. He needed like 2 snacks to be packed plus a lunch every day. And
Yeah.
before I had only had to pack like um one lunch.
Yeah.
I think the preschool provided snack.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like a lot,
Yeah.
right? I still have my full-time job. Trying to start this other job. Um, like I'm the primary meal maker in my
Mhm.
home. Right, like how is this all going to happen? So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a meal plan for my family and this is how we're going to do it and this is going to make it so I don't have to think about it because I have too many other things to think about. And as I was sitting there on the Saturday morning doing this, I was like, I thought back to a survey that I had done with my audience where I really ask a lot of questions like, how can I help you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what problem do you have that I might be able to solve? People had asked for a meal plan, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
really? You want a meal plan? Like, I don't think I'm the right person for that. Um, I don't like cooking. I don't like recipe development. Uh,
That's funny.
none of this. And as I'm doing this, I was like, maybe some other people would want this. And
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, I mean, this all happened like literally. I'm in my pajamas. I haven't even gotten out of my pajamas, and my hair is, all over the place. And it's a Saturday morning, and I'm just typing on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I took a little picture, I put it on social media. I was like, hey, is this something that would interest you too? This is what I'm putting together for my family. Would this interest you? So many people were like, oh my gosh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, maybe this is my ticket out.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what's going to enable me to support my family. And then it went from like, here's how to make my life easier to this is going to make my life a lot harder to
There's a
get this
lot
deal.
more on my plate. Yeah.
But um so I
Mm-hmm.
I began to make that a product, and I
Okay.
slowly released that to people. And it was that enabled me to finally say, okay, I
Yeah.
can make this work.
There's something here.
Yeah, between the two
Right.
and the sponsorships. I mean, I was still doing
Right.
sponsorships at
Of
that
course.
time. So it's like, and the Amazon affiliate, and like
Right.
one thing is not, I think there's this perception that like, I don't know, there's some influencers out there and they can like get these super expensive contracts. Okay, but like, I'm not that person. No
Yeah.
pasta company is going to pay me $20,000 to
Yeah.
promote their pasta.
Yeah. Well, and the game's changed, right? Because all the
Right.
brands and companies picked up on what's happening, and now I know what you're saying. There's a certain level of influencer, which actually your account is probably at, but that can get a lot of money from a brand. But what's happening, I know a lot of the smaller accounts, because the brands figured out what's going on, instead of paying a few people a lot of money, they're paying a lot of people a little bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
And they're spreading it around, and they're going, the
Yep.
more people we can share this to, the better, instead of really going after the bigger accounts for more money. And so it's made it
Right.
harder to make money with one stream. It's like you have to
Oh
have
yeah, you
a
can't.
ton of things going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, now people are like you said, they're like, we price people out. Like I price people out because most brands, they don't want to pay, I mean, for me to try to even get the attention of a brand is very difficult because they do want to work with the smaller people. Smaller, an account with 30,000 people has a higher engagement rate than an account with a million people.
Mm,
That's just how it works. So from the brand perspective, yeah, it makes a lot more sense. So I don't have very many sponsorship opportunities.
interesting.
But also, again, just going back to like who I am and what works for me, like
Right.
the whole sponsorship thing, I mean, that is a
Yeah.
deal. I
Yeah.
mean, there is so much that goes
It's a
on
lot.
behind the scenes
Yeah.
of a 7 slide sponsored
Yeah.
video.
Yeah. And I just know from podcasters that a lot of the podcasters who have brand deals, it is mostly because they're with a podcast network that handles all of that.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, that's
And just,
huge.
yeah,
There is
yeah,
so much administrative back and forth. I mean, like I said, I do work with one company, and um it's a lot of time.
yeah,
I mean, what comes out is like 7 15-second video slides.
right.
You're like, oh my gosh,
It's a blip.
you made money
Yeah,
with like this. Hours.
yeah,
It took me several hours to make that seven
yep,
15-second video slides.
yeah,
I mean, hours,
yeah.
not to mention back and forth with the brand, getting approval. I rarely have to reshoot them, but one time I did,
Mm,
right? So there's like all this stuff back and forth. You're making sure they're happy with it and they're not, and like you're true to yourself and your brand. And
yeah. No, it's a ton of
I
work.
mean, it's
Yeah,
huge. It's a huge amount of work. So if you're like an account with 30,000 people and, they're only paying you $300, $300, for a brand contract, that's a little bit of money for a lot of work.
Yeah.
So if people are like, oh my gosh, you're an influencer, isn't that amazing? It's like, yes, the amount of great gratitude I have for the platform, the people, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
The opportunity to be able to reach families with positive information that will help them feed their family. I mean, I can't think of a greater gift than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, but the idea that like, this is some sort of like easy money for people.
Butterflies and roses and sunshine of a
No,
job.
I
Yeah.
mean,
There's still challenges, right? Yeah.
my favorite meme that I've ever seen is this like, it's like this old guy sitting with his cup of coffee and his feet up on the desk. And it's one of these memes where it shows the same picture in the top and the bottom.
Mm.
And at this top, it says, I can't wait to leave my 9 to 5. And at the bottom, it says, so I can work for myself 24/7.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I talked about this
Yeah.
on an episode recently where I was recalling how I used to daydream when I worked for a corporate company. I used to daydream about what it would be like to have to work for myself and be able to like get my nails done or go to the grocery store at a leisurely pace and not like rush during my lunch hour and have to commute and this and that. And I was like joking that I think since I left my corporate job, I think I've got my nails done 3 times in 6 years because
Yeah.
once I became like my own boss, it's just like, no, we don't have time for that. Like I'm a worse boss than the corporate structure that I had for so long. Like it's terrible. But
Right.
yeah, I totally, that's on point. I want to switch gears a little bit. You've mentioned a few times just kind of like coming back to yourself. What works for me? What is going to fulfill me? Um, and so I'm curious, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, of course. I believe when I first started following your account, you did not have your face on there so much. And now we see your face more regularly. Was there a shift there or am I mistaken?
So I was very present in stories.
In stories.
Lots,
Okay.
yeah, lots of my face there. But
Okay.
because my content was very education focused and very like much like, okay, here's how you could serve something differently and get a different result with your child. It
Okay.
just didn't make sense for my face to be
Okay.
there.
It was just
So
more like practical of
yeah.
yeah.
This is kind of content that I have, and then there's occasional pictures of like me with the family or whatever. I'm not like a clothing influencer. Like you don't want to see my clothes.
I
I
know.
don't know
We're
how to stand
joking
in front
about
of
our
the
hoodies
camera.
before.
Like I know, right? Um, so it was really reels
Okay.
because reels you have to
You
be
gotta do
there.
it. Yeah.
So that's when my face started showing up even more on my feed.
Okay.
But um I would say like my face used to be even more present in my stories.
Oh, interesting.
Now there's like a little less of my face. Not it's just kind of like because the style shifted a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And just curious. I find especially the creators who aren't, you know, showing their clothing or like
Mhm.
whatever, like if they're showing food or their house or something like that, that they typically have this moment of like, people want to get to know me. And I didn't
Mhm.
make the connection to stories. But the other thing I want to ask you is we do on occasion see your family, see your kids. I know this is, I feel like kind of a hot topic of like whether or not to like show our kids on social media and things like
Mhm.
that. Like, was there a decision made? Is there specific guidelines that you have around that? And how do you navigate showing your family on your platform?
Yeah, so I think this is really a personal thing, and I think some people are like, the issue is really consent, right? What is a consent? Um, my kids are under 18, so they technically can't give consent. And even if I were to say to them, do you is this, I mean, they can't.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're giving what they're giving permission to. And I think every family in our situation is kind of, they're saying like, what when my child looks back on this, how are they going to feel about it?
Mm.
And I really try to keep that in mind. We decided early on we weren't going to share their names.
Okay.
They know that. They know that people aren't allowed to know their names unless they give permission.
Mhm.
So if we're out and somebody says, "What's your name?" my kids sometimes won't tell them. And
Mhm.
they know, like, hey, you never have to tell somebody your name. Um, we try to be careful about like our location or where they go to school or things like this so that
Yeah.
those kind of stay out of there for like safety perspectives. And then I always keep in mind when my child is 14, 15, 16, how are they going to feel if they know somebody saw this?
Yeah.
And when I keep that in mind, what does that take out? Tantrums,
Mhm.
bad behavior, personal stuff, health information, their life story. For me, I want them to have their own life story.
Mm.
Do I share parts of them? Sure. You know,
Mhm.
they've always had kind of a storyline of their kind of adventures that they
Mm.
have. They're kind of like the adventurous, danger-seeking boys. Uh, that's very generic.
Mhm.
That's not getting into the details of who they are and what they are in their life struggles. And I have shared the basics that, I do have a picky eater and I have a kid who's had a hard time staying on the growth chart. And that's as far as it goes,
Yeah.
right? I could get into a lot more detail and
Right.
my message might be even more effective and it might help a lot more people, but I don't feel comfortable sharing their life details. That's for them to decide. Um, but again, every family is, they're trying to navigate that. Some people are like, oh, what do you think about, your child's face being on social media and AI? Like, face is going to be on social media anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going anywhere.
um,
Like it's gonna be here.
so I mean, the cat's already out of that bag,
Yeah.
really. And I really respect people who are like, you know what, we've decided our kids aren't going to be on there at all.
Yeah.
I totally am behind that, and I respect that, and I understand that. Um, we've made a slightly different decision, and I think, and also now that they're old enough, they will say, "Hey, I don't want that to go on Instagram.
Mm. Mhm.
I don't want anybody else to see that. What are you going to do with that picture?" Right?
Right.
So we try. Of course, anytime they say, "I don't want to be in this," or "I do want to be in this," that's the end of it. Like
Yeah.
that's their decision. There's no pushback. And I think another one is like, are you going to be compensating your
Yeah.
child
I know.
for sharing part of their life story going
Yeah.
forward? And so for us, um, we do we do compensate them.
Interesting.
Um, and so they don't know that yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But we are putting that aside for them because we feel like, look, you were a child model
Yeah.
for your whole childhood. That has a value to it. And yes, of course, I fully supported you and like all this stuff, but also, um, since we can at this point, we do put some money aside. And then they also know like if they pose for a picture or something like that, they get paid for that. Like
Okay.
it's like $1.
Okay.
but
Okay.
but they do. So they're understanding like, look, your images aren't free.
Yeah.
They have a value. Like this is part of the business.
Yeah.
So we try to go back and forth on that, like what
Yeah.
seems right for us.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing 'cause it's something I've been struggling with. And, I have about a 6 and a 4-year old. They're both about to have birthdays. And, I always wonder, on one hand, I kind of like to keep things very separate. On the other hand, I know that I would probably be posting more if I put them more in because I'm just with them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've kind of just erred on not showing them until I am really clear on how I want to show them. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what I'm getting from you is whatever you decide to do, just have the clarity and the intention behind what you're doing.
Right.
And then I just want to clarify with you, when you say compensate and they make $1 or this and that, is there a actual like legitimate financial system set up, or is this just like within your family you have a separate
Oh, like
account
the
that you
little
move money
dollars.
to?
Yeah. Right. We're moving money into an account for them.
Okay, so it's an account set up for them that is like strictly for this purpose, and
Mhm.
it's set up that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No,
Yeah.
it's just I just clarifying because it's like, yeah, it's just something to think about
No,
moving
that's something we
forward.
can do, right? Not everybody's gonna be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
But since we can, we feel like we just feel like that's important for us.
Yeah, totally. I hear you. Okay. Okay. So, I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with your online community. I started the episode with like 1.9 million. Like, oh my God. Do you think have you done anything specific looking back that you think really helped to nurture that community and keep people around and grow it, and any specific advice or anything that you think you did really well along the way to keep that community thriving?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I answered every DM and every comment for years and years and years
Yeah.
and years
Yeah.
and years. And I still answer most of them, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so it's always been very authentic. I feel like that's the thing is like, do you know your people? Are you there for your people? Are you just there to make money? Because people
Mhm.
feel that.
Yeah.
And so if you are, good luck.
Right. Right.
um, but if you're like a really intentional person, you really care and you're really putting the so I kind of put it like this, like if you provide really valuable free information, people will come and they'll tell their friends. Um, which is what I did. I
Mhm.
shared more free information, more detailed help, more of the how to than anybody else at the time. And, sometimes I have mixed feelings about that because I do feel like it kind of undercuts some of the market. Um,
Mm.
was that the right thing? I don't know. I don't know, but it's what I did.
Yeah.
So, and because I didn't have a business, it didn't feel, I
Right.
wasn't thinking about it in those
Right.
terms, right?
Right.
Because it was purely like, how much value can I bring my people?
Mhm.
Like, this is what I'm here for. I'm here for my people. I'm here to make a difference. Then eventually it became, if I'm going to be here for you and be here to help the world, I'm going to have to bring in an income for me and my family, right?
Right.
I'm just going to have to. So that is when it shifted to like business. But I mean, when I interview people to hire or even a contract with, I mean, it is very much like, why are you here?
Mhm.
What are you here for? Because if you're not here for the people, for the mission, then we don't have anything common.
Mhm.
Like we're here, like the business has to be here. If the business here is not here, none of us are here.
Mm.
Super important. But equally important is also, do we care about the people? Do we care about our tone? How do people feel when they come to us? If we've had a depressed mom coming to our community, having trouble feeding their child, how are they going to feel when they leave?
Mm.
Like when I have trainings for people who write articles for our health and development team. Like they have to go through and really it is like, as you're writing, you have to be thinking about the person who's struggling the most.
Yeah.
How are they going to feel when they read this? And if they're not going to feel decent, I mean, obviously people can still feel bad, but like
Right.
we don't want we share the truth, but we
Mm.
don't bash people in the face with the truth.
Yeah.
We share the information, but we're not bashing people in the face with the information.
Right.
There's two ways that I can talk about, say, let's pick a super controversial one, breastfeeding.
Right.
There's two ways I can talk about that. One is like bashing people in the face with information, and the other is offering information as well as giving people options, right? So that's how we do everything. When you are there for your people, like I don't think of the people in my community as customers. They're not customers. They're the families. They are the
Right.
families in the community. And we help them with their problems. And sometimes that includes us providing a product that they buy. But That's like first and foremost. We call people, when we're talking about them, we call people our families. Like,
Yeah.
hey, these are our families in our programs.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're just here to make money, maybe, it is what it is. But that's not how we've operated. And I feel like it's what's made us who we are, is because like we're here for a specific group of
Yeah.
families
Yeah.
in whatever the way we can be.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, it's your brand voice, but also now at this point, your personal company culture of just how you, because at
Yeah,
this point
yeah.
you're saying you have help, you have someone, you mentioned trainings, things like that. Like
Mhm.
it's now your standard. Like
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
nothing else goes. Yeah.
Yeah. And like nothing goes out without someone making sure it sounds right.
Yeah.
And that someone is usually me.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So with that in mind, at 1.9, I don't imagine you've gotten to 1.9 without some sort of either negativity, backlash, I don't know. I could be wrong. You could be one of the unicorns. But I typically find, especially when it comes to parenting, even food, these are things that people have strong opinions about. Have you experienced, challenging community members and or just bypassers, trolls, things like that, and like how have you navigated through those times?
Yeah. So interestingly, up until recently, the Kizzy and Color community has been astonishingly positive.
Mm-hmm.
The number of trolls that have showed up on my page before reels were hot,
Mm-hmm.
just like incredibly low.
Mm-hmm.
So few trolls, so few negative comments, um, so few like I mean, how many comments did I have to delete in the first few years? I don't know if I had to delete any. And I
Yeah.
read aside from like bot traffic,
Right.
um, nothing,
Right.
nothing but positivity. Just like a really truly incredible community. Reels changed that.
Mm,
Brought in like a different, so people who didn't really want to be part of the community,
yeah.
who were just like saw a video and they didn't have any context for it. Now they like have an opinion.
Yeah.
Um,
Fun.
I mean, I will say there's a couple topics. One time, I think the first time I was like, oh, maybe, wow. I made a post about how the keto diet isn't for children because people have been asking me, should we meet our kids to a keto diet? I
Mm,
was like, no, don't
right.
do that. Now it can be used it is a medical intervention for children, and I always note that. But the keto folks were like really angry that I
Mm,
would say that.
yeah.
um, so yeah, there've been a couple things, over the years. I've had to take down a couple stories because they were just being really misinterpreted recently, or interpreted wrong. Recently there has been um, uh, some folks who have different opinions, which is fine. I love different opinions. Like if you go on a controversial post anywhere on my feed, you will see like we allow differences of opinion. We allow people to say she's wrong. We allow disagreement in the comments. We allow people to share their opinions, even if I think they're wildly uninformed. As long as they're not dangerous, we delete dangerous. No name calling. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You
Yeah.
can't come on my page and call each other names.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Or like be swearing at each other, right? So we take out, can't be sexist, racist, you know,
Okay.
you can't be making fun of people's weight, things like
Right.
that. Um, but recently, yeah, there's some people who have decided they disagree with me, and they are, rallying their communities against to create content that, says my stuff is wrong. Like fine.
Right.
The things that we have differences of opinion on, in my opinion, are splitting the finest of hairs.
Mm,
I'm here for the parents who want to take the next step,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting people to make a huge jump. I'm not expecting families to be perfect. I'm I'm gonna keep I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. I'm gonna keep trying to make a difference in the lives of families. Now, I am constantly reviewing the evidence, constantly,
Mm,
constantly reading the research that's coming out every week, right? If at any point I'm wrong, and certainly I have changed my position on things over time,
mm,
I am more than happy to hear about it, acknowledge it, decide. I will make a statement if I need to. I will change my position. I will slowly shift over time. That's what those sorts of things happen. So that's why I don't really just like, look, you have a different opinion. Great.
right,
You know,
right,
make your case. Maybe I'll come to your side.
right,
But if you're out there calling me names and, making
right.
content to make me look dumb, I mean, if that's how you want to show up in the world, fine.
That's a you problem.
I mean, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I feel like the other thing is, as somebody who's like constantly making words and content, if I have a low period in my life, which I have had recently, I had a lot of personal things going on that I'm not going to talk about on social media or whatever. Um, if I am then, because I have so many other things going on, less conscious about what I put out, and I maybe say something that I don't
Mm,
even agree with, which has
mm,
happened.
mm,
Um, there's absolutely no room for, oh my gosh, you use this word instead of this word, or you said this instead of that, or there's no grace, there's no flex, there's no like, oh hey, you're a human too. If you have 1.9 million followers, every word counts. So that's been an interesting experience.
yeah.
Um, because it's interesting to lose your humanity, especially when I started this whole thing to find community and to find people, to now be in a position where like, oh, people just talk about me in the comments, right? Those
Yeah.
used to be my people talking to me, and now they're talking to each other about me in the comments.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that's
oh,
bizarre. Yeah.
I've lost my people
Like
in a lot of
I'm still
ways,
here though.
right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
I'm still here, but you don't think I'm here.
yeah. That's weird.
Um, so I think there's been a lot of almost like grieving over that,
Mm,
especially as reels came in, and just shifted like the entire dynamic of how people interact with stories, how they interact with things. It's like I lost all of my friends, not all of them,
mm,
but I lost so many friends. The whole feeling, the whole reason that I got into this was gone.
yeah.
So I feel like that's really shifted. And now add on top of that, people are like, yeah, we don't like that you have 1.9 million followers. And so that makes you blah, 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 a non-human person. And now we're just going to like kind of attack you publicly. That's been interesting. I've never imagined I would need skills to deal with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny because so much of why I started this show was because the off-air conversation I was having with people who all I found all through social media, so they all have platforms. We were having these off-air conversations about exactly this. And then going into like whatever, like the interview with you and I would have been about kids and food. And so
Mm-hmm.
we would have had this conversation off air for 15 minutes.
Right.
And then we would
Right.
have done kids and food. And at some point, I
Right.
was like, no, no, I need to switch this. That
Yeah.
off air conversation is the one that needs to be having on air. And so much like the one question I used to ask people was if there was something you wish you could say to your followers face to face, like what would it be? And it always came back to some variation of I'm a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I am more than a handle. I am a person. I make mistakes. I have feelings. I have bad days,
Yeah.
good days,
Yeah.
ups and downs. And, um, you know, so that is so much of the inspiration behind this. But then what you just said now really shifted that for me in an interesting way because what I heard you say was when you read an article or find evidence to support a change of opinion on your end, that your self and I'm gonna say confidence, your self-awareness and your humanity is such that you come out and say, I've I've read something, I've changed my mind. Like you're sharing that. And I think what I'm getting at is that as much as the focus of this for me has always been, hey, people out there consuming content, creators are people too, it's also really making me realize the responsibility of the creator to continue to show that humanity and say, I've changed my opinion to sort of like, for lack of a better way to say it, to like be a grown up and say, like, I made a mistake. Take it or leave it. Like, I don't know. Like, instead of just, you know, like hiding behind things or running or whatever, it's like we actually have to be like mature humans too, facing forward and own and acknowledge when we make a mistake or when we say the wrong thing or when we whatever. And so I don't know, it's just like an interesting
Yeah, I think you always
thing.
have to be you have to be careful with how these things are worded, right?
Yeah.
Right? Um, because like a lot of the shifts that I've had in position and opinion, they're small shifts over the time. They're the shifts
Mm,
in nuance, right?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, where it's like, it's not as black and white as it used to be. And so
Yeah.
suddenly the content that I'm creating is less black and white. Or, and I may not make an announcement
Right.
about something, but it's shifting. It's like, well, have you also thought about this? Have you thought
Mm,
about this? But as a person that's putting the information out there, you are absolutely responsible for doing the best you can in terms
yes.
of what information you're putting out there and what you do know, what you don't know. Um, like if somebody asks me like, oh, hey, what lice comb did you use for your kids or what lice spray?
Mm-hmm.
I just had a lice situation at school, which is why lice is on my brain. Um, I'm not gonna be like, oh, hey, I'm a lice expert. It's like, no,
Right.
this is coming from me as a mom.
Right.
So I think sometimes a lot of it is, have you thought about, you know, do you really want to be talking about this if this is not your area?
Mm,
You right? So
right.
like if
Yeah.
if people are like, oh, how do you get your kid to watch less TV? I don't know. I'm not a behavior person, but as a mom, here's what I've done. Right.
Right.
So I think a lot of it is showing your humility and your knowledge. Of course, if you're just like a straight up influencer where you're just kind of your lifestyle is your thing, you have a lot more leeway. You can pretty much say anything you want
Yeah.
at all. Um, but because I come at it from a healthcare adjacent perspective,
Yeah.
there's more responsibility on us because I'm saying, hey, this is the evidence based, or this is what we know at this point. But we really try to work in a lot of qualifiers to everything we say because evidence changes,
Right.
right? And we try to help people understand that. Like, yeah, we think this is what we know now. This is what we know now,
Right.
and this is what we think is right, but that could change.
Right.
And so we always want to give ourselves like space to grow and change and shift and tweak and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. And you said earlier, I don't remember exactly the context in which you said it, but we're all just doing the best we can with the information we have now. Like,
Right. And we always have to remember like that's not an excuse for poor information or behavior.
yeah.
So like I could be doing the best I can and putting stuff out there that's totally crap.
Mm,
And I, as someone who's influenced a lot of people, I have that fear. Like, what if I got something wrong?
mm,
What if I went along with this group of evidence-based papers and in 20 years, it turns out to be totally wrong?
yeah.
That will be on me. Like I will have spread that information that hurt people, and there's always unintended consequences. So I think, if you are out there influencing people, that's something you just have to keep in mind. Like it's possible that you may be hurting people. And if you are, is there a way for you to do less of that? Or is there a way for you to switch? Or is it just one of those things where like, just like in everything in life, there's some pros and some cons, right?
Right.
Um, so I, and there's certainly things that like I say now with a lot more nuance than I said even like 5 years ago,
Yeah.
where I'm like, whoa, this is a lot less cut and dry.
Yeah.
So the people that I told at that time may still think it's very cut and dry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, that's actually probably not the best for them to think it's that cut and dry, because there's actually a lot of nuance.
Mm.
And so but at this point,
Yeah.
I'm just providing more nuance. Like, hey, things that I was recently talking about, kind of some parental behaviors around sugary foods. And there's a lot more nuance now that I understand more things about children, and I've seen how it pans out with my kids and their peers,
Right.
kids who've been around 8 or 10 years, right? So I do think it's, as somebody who's showing their face to a bunch of people, what it's hard to kind of wrap your head around what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you have, 1,000 followers and 100 people see a story, that's 100 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I think we
Yeah.
forget what these numbers
I
mean.
know.
That's
I
100
know.
people who just heard what you said.
Yeah.
I hope that you're thinking about what you said
Yes. Yes.
before you say it.
Yes.
So that, I mean, and that's a hard skill. That's a hard skill to develop, and something you definitely have to practice, but it's essential
Yeah.
to be able to, like, because at the end of the day, you are going to be responsible for your words.
Yes. Yeah.
So do your best.
Yeah. 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 And it touches on something I say a lot from another point of view, but it's like, I talk about this from the point of view of how creators often feel isolated and alone, because on one hand, you have this whole digital community that you're sharing your content to, but when you're creating it, you're usually alone in an office with a ring light and a phone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very isolating, and it's reminding me of that, because yeah, like 100 people is 100 people. It's like you're not alone actually, and you're not you're not just sharing
Yeah.
this out into the world and reading a number and it means nothing. It's like that is a lot of people, and it comes back to like a responsibility thing for
Mm-hmm.
me of like, what is our responsibility to those 100 people, and what is our responsibility to ourselves to just, yeah,
Yeah. And
to think about
I
it and be
mean,
intentional. Yeah.
right. I think one of the things that I think about a lot, and that I even talk to my kids about a lot, and they don't really grasp like how people see content and stuff like that. How do you want to show up in the world?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I remember I followed this one lady for a while who kind of talked about Instagram stuff or shared her life, and kind of interesting. And she was like, stuff on the internet is forever. If you put something out there, it's there forever. Somebody has it on a server there. Somebody took a screenshot of it on their phone. Somebody screen recorded it. It's there. It's out there forever. You can never, ever take it back.
Yeah.
You can never take it back. So when you're showing up, now we're humans, which I think is one of the things that makes being the content creation really hard, because I am only ever at my best a human, right? I can never not be a human, which means I will always make a mistake. I will always get something wrong, right? But we have to live with this tension of, I'm being a human, but also 100 people just saw me, right?
Right.
And we can kind of hide behind the numbers and think, oh, it's just me and my phone, and there are, it's just a number. And I do that too. I mean, otherwise, how would we exist?
Yeah.
How could you be a content creator and truly understand how many people are seeing you, right?
Yeah.
You can't get into that
No.
much. It's
Yeah.
too far into your head.
Yeah.
But there is this element of like, every DM you send out is forever. Every comment that you put out there is forever. Every video you put out there is forever. Not to say you should never take it down,
Right.
but also these things last, and you have to think about who you want to be. Like, I think about some of the people who've recently, written some things about me that are kind of on the nasty side. Like, I have a choice of how I'm going to respond to that. Am I going to respond with that? Is that what I want to put out there that's going to be forever? Or am I just going to be like, okay,
see ya.
That's who they are.
Yeah.
And that's what they're putting out there. But I don't want to engage with that I don't want to engage with that. That's not who I want to be. That's not who I am. And that's not what I want to put out there, because what you are putting out there in your community is what's going to come back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're putting out there kind of like, and if you're putting snark out there, you're going to get the snark. So if you like the snark, that's great. If you don't, then you're going to have to change your tone.
Yeah.
And if you're putting kind of like nasty in your face, cancel culture stuff out there, that's what you're going to get back.
Yeah.
So I just always come back to like when I'm encountering these things that I never thought I'd encounter before, or never thought that I would have to deal with, like, since when am I a person that people publicly criticize? Like,
Yeah.
I don't even, what?
I know. It's
I'm
bizarre.
just like a mom with two
Right.
kids, right?
Right.
But I think about, what is my response going to be? Who am I going to be in the face of this sort of thing? What am I going to put out there?
Yeah. Yeah,
Because it is like what we put out there is forever.
Yeah. No, it is a great reminder, or perhaps first time lesson for some creators listening. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and I've helped you over now. And so I just want to give you a final opportunity if there's anything that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't think to, or anything kind of lingering on your heart, mind, or soul based on anything we talked about today that you want to make sure to leave your fellow creators with before we wrap up today.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I feel like we covered
I know
a
we
lot
covered
of
a lot.
things.
We got some good stuff here.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's my
stuff.
closing message is, hey,
Yeah,
what you put out there is forever.
Yeah.
But also I get it, right? So we have this huge responsibility that's always hanging over our heads, that like acts over our heads. But also you're not alone. There's other people and they're all experiencing that too. So when it feels like it's a lot, make a friend and exchange phone numbers, so that when things are rough and you realize that reel that you worked 2 hours on or 4 hours on, and it got like 0.0000001% engagement, have a friend that you can actually send a text to and be like, hey, I just lost 6 hours of work. And that friend can be like, oh, I feel that. I get it. I think that's one of the things that's been so huge, is finding a creator who's somewhere near to you on the experience continuum. You're like, you have somewhere in the same range of followers and you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
That can be so life-saving to have that other person. You have their number, not just DMs. Like, get their phone number so you can send them a text. Then is when you know that you actually built like a real connection. And it's super important because, I mean, content creation is a lot. It is a lot to manage.
And the only people that get it are the people that do it.
Oh yeah. People are like, oh, can't you just outsource that? I'm like, no. Why not?
Yeah. Or again, like I was saying before, like, oh, it must be so fun all the time.
I mean, not to say there's not fun things.
Totally. But it's no different than any other job where there's fun and then there's hard stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. You shared so much incredible wisdom and knowledge, and I just really appreciate all your time today and everything you shared. And just as a mom, I've learned so much from your account, and this is such a great reminder for me too, I need to check back in with what's going on there, because school lunch and snack are recently kicking my butt. So I need a tune up.
So hard.
Oh my gosh. It's so brutal. But thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. So this conversation took a turn in a direction that we've not yet heard on the show. This deep philosophical question of the long-standing implications of putting content out into the world for public consumption. You can tell that Jennifer thinks about this a lot. The responsibility we have to not just do our best to make sure everything we put out is accurate, true, and helpful, but to also take responsibility when we inevitably make a mistake. It's an important lesson for all of us to remember. We're going to misstep, misspeak, overstate something, or possibly even share information that felt right at the time, but later turns out to be untrue. Or perhaps we've changed our mind. Or perhaps we learn more and decide, did what I say become potentially harmful? Yeah, that's pretty scary territory to be in. To think that what we say now, even with the very best intentions and every bit of dedication to accuracy, could end up being something inaccurate or problematic down the line, it's something that feels very much like a nightmare to many of us. But how we handle the situation matters. We can choose to shy away from it or pretend that we're infallible or dig our heels in when things change. Or we can stay committed to doing our best while also understanding that we are responsible for what we say and what we share. And if and when we make mistakes, we can have a plan for how to navigate those mistakes graciously, honestly, and most importantly, with accountability. There's something really important in the nuances of how Jennifer pointed out that the more she has learned and the more she has grown, the less black and white she tries to come across. She's been creating content long enough to understand that just because she feels strongly about something right now doesn't mean she always will. And that just because something is right or true doesn't mean we always need to push people on it every opportunity we get. And this is very apparent in her content. While it is full of best practices and important information, it is extremely open, nuanced, and non-judgmental. And that's clearly something she does very intentionally, understanding that parenting, food, body, all that stuff is rarely black and white or all or nothing. And so no matter what type of content we create or who our audience is, I think that's the main thing I want you to remember. Is we don't need to waffle or toe the line out of fear of offending people, but we do need to take some perspective that there is room for growth, change, learning, and evolution. Jennifer, this was an incredible reminder for all of us. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of the help you're giving parents and moms out there. Feeding kids is not easy. I know we didn't even touch on all of that, but man, I know personally our family has benefited from your account. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. To learn more about me, my world, all the things going on, head over to ChristieRocha.com. Bye.